which is the most important function in life? Well, you guessed it right, it's reproduction. Let's study 10th Standard ICSE Chapter 13 in Biology, the reproductive system, without which all the sexual organisms would become extinct. Reproduction is the formation of new individuals by sexual or asexual means, which can repeat the process in their own turn. But which is better, sexual or asexual? Well, I was talking from scientific point of view. The difference is here no gametes are formed, but here we have a male gamete and a female gamete formed, which means that genetic mixing will increase the variations in the offsprings. No two children are alike. If you have a sibling, just wonder, even though you all have the same parents, yet you all have so many dissimilarities. This is what I mean when I say there is variation in offsprings. This is very important for evolution and survival of the species. Variation is very rare in asexual reproduction. But asexual reproduction will result in many more offsprings compared to sexual reproduction. There is only one parent involved here, and here we have two. It's a slower process, and this is a rapid process during favorable conditions. So both of them have pros and cons. But let's study the sexual characteristics of humans, male and female. First, let's start with secondary sexual characters. They are secondary because they don't participate in reproduction, and their role is simply to attract the opposite gender or help the gender to be identified easily. Just like the lion has a mane of hair, just like you can easily distinguish between a peacock and a peahen because the peacock will have very colorful feathers. Similarly, even in human beings, we have some outer differences, external differences. For example, males have beard and mustache, females have breasts, males have more muscles. That's just an evolutionary advantage that males have since they are supposedly responsible for hunting. The skeletal structure is different. If you notice, females have a wider hip because they have a womb. They have to bear children, whereas males don't. Psyche and behavior is also different because the hormones are different and even the brain structure is slightly different. Although we should not generalize, but females are usually more compassionate and better at communication, whereas males are more aggressive because of testosterone and other reasons. And males have a deeper voice, a low-pitched voice compared to a female. But these are secondary sexual characteristics. The primary reproductive organs are the gonads. That is, the males have the testes and the females have the ovaries, and we shall study these in detail now. The testes are important because they produce sperms, the male gamete, and the ovaries produce the egg cells. Apart from the primary reproductive parts, there are some accessory reproductive parts as well. So they are involved in reproduction, but they're not absolutely essential. They only facilitate the fusion of the male and female gamete. By the way, now we have technology that we can do fertilization in vitro in the test tube. So there might come a day when reproduction will be totally lab-oriented. But as of now, we should study the reproductive system starting with males. Now the testes, there is one pair. Then we have the sperm duct and we have some accessory glands, a penis and urethra. These are the functions. Let's understand these functions with the help of the diagram. We'll also understand the locations then. A pair of testes. Testis is singular. So even if one is damaged, still the person will be able to reproduce. Here, the sperms are produced, which mature in the epididymis, which is a coil here of tube, and then it extends into the sperm duct called vas deferens. So we've got two sperm ducts, and then they unite as they pass through the glands and enter the urethra, which passes through the penis, which is there only in the males, and this is the urethral opening. Now urethra is also concerned with urination, so you can see that it starts from the urinary bladder. Now this is not a part of the reproductive system, but we need to understand the comparative location. So the kidney filters the blood, which you've studied in the excretory system chapter. Urine is produced, which passes through the ureters into the urinary bladder, and a pressure builds up, and when the sphincter muscle releases, urine comes out, which is also called micturition. This same urethra serves a purpose in the reproductive system as well. So it has a dual purpose in the males. The sperms which are produced by the testes, they swim, millions of them at a time, and the juices secreted by these accessory glands are added to it, and these secretions together with the sperms is called semen, which is off-white, and it is the semen which comes out of the penis or the urethra during ejaculation. Note, ejaculation and urination cannot happen simultaneously. But what are these accessory glands? Well, the biggest of them is the prostate gland, and its function is to produce an alkaline solution. So it makes the semen alkaline. Why? I'll answer that shortly. Just below that, we see a very small gland called bulbourethral gland. Now that is responsible for producing a lubricant. And we see two glands just below the urinary bladder. They are the seminal vesicles. They're actually vesicles, seminal vesicles. And they produce a medium, a secretion, which serves as a medium for the transportation of the sperm. So it also has some nutrients to keep the sperms active because they've got a great job to do. This was the front view. Now let's see it from the side view. From the side view, as you can see again, they've shown only one testis. The sperm duct goes round the urinary bladder and then passes through the glands, which adds their secretions, and the semen can come out through the urethra, which passes through the penis. Now the penis has an erectile tissue. So when the penis is excited, or when the male is excited, more blood is retained in these blood vessels, and it inflates. It becomes large and hard and erect. This is called erection. So if it is manually or physically stimulated, or even visually stimulated, or just randomly, it may just have an erection. Only once the penis is erect and rigid, then sexual intercourse can happen. More about it shortly. Now, a question arises: why do these testes hang outside the body in these bag-like structures called the scrotum? It's a scrotal sac. Why isn't it inside the body like the ovary is in the females? Well, the body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, which is quite high, and it won't permit the maturation of sperms. So, because the testis is outside the body, the temperature now is a couple of degrees Celsius less. So 35 degrees Celsius is appropriate for the sperms to mature. And that is why very tight undergarments should not be worn. Now let's slice the testis and look inside it in the diagram. So we see that it is made up of many lobules, many compartments, each having seminiferous tubules. That's where the sperms are produced, and then they join into this central area, and from here arises the efferent ducts, and there is a highly coiled duct called epididymis. That's where the sperms mature, and then the sperm duct starts. Now note that apart from these seminiferous tubules, we have some interstitial cells here which produce hormones like testosterone, which is very important for manly characteristics and for sexual reproduction for males. Next, let's study something called inguinal canal. But before that, interstitial cells, by the way, are also called Leydig cells, which produce testosterone inside the testis. Now, often you may have heard that a part of the small intestine may enter the scrotum, due to which the scrotum enlarges, or they may look like a third ball here. That is called hernia. Whenever any part of the body accidentally enters a region where it's not supposed to be, you can term it as a hernia. And this canal in between is called inguinal canal. You see, before birth, the testes in a baby are inside the abdomen, but during birth, it descends into the scrotum. If it doesn't descend, then the person will be sterile. He won't be able to reproduce. Make sure you take the double markings, double ticks here to practice them. Mark all the functions and the locations. This chapter has a lot of functions and locations, but that's true of any bio chapter. This flow chart is the best way to summarize and revise it. Make sure you write urethra out here and corpus glands. These are another name of the respective parts. Now let's talk about the female reproductive system, which is definitely more complicated. Now, this is the front view, of course. This is entirely inside the female body. We've got two ovaries here. And we've got this oviduct, also called fallopian tube. And this is the womb, or the uterus. This is the uterus lining and the muscular wall. So, on a particular day of the menstrual cycle, or of the month, the egg cell is released called the female gamete. And if a sperm can, against all odds, come here and fertilize it, then that is called fertilization, producing a zygote which will have the chromosomes of both mother and father now. 23 chromosomes from the sperm, that is father, 23 chromosomes from the egg cell, that is from mother. And so the zygote has 46 chromosomes which will develop into a human being. Human beings should have 46 chromosomes in their cells. Now this zygote will travel towards the uterus and get lodged out here, which is called implantation. And that's the beginning of pregnancy. Now it will derive nutrition from the mother's womb, the uterus here. The nutritive tissue is created around here, which is called placenta. A link is also created soon, which is called the umbilical cord. That was there from your belly button to your mother's womb. Of course, once the baby is delivered, the umbilical cord is cut. Now this baby starts developing, cell division happens, and various parts of the body are created. And in around 9 months, that is 280 days, a baby is formed which can be delivered out. And coming out, the opening of the uterus is called the cervix, and then outside we have a muscular flexible opening called vagina, and the baby comes out head first usually through the vagina, which expands a lot. It can be a little painful, but it's totally worth it because the hormones released soon, the oxytocin, which is a love hormone, and it gives you pleasure and creates a bond between the mother and the child. Now, this vagina has various other functions as well, which I will discuss shortly. But let's go deeper into the structure of these systems here. So we've got a connection out here, which is the ovarian ligament. If you look at a side view, then we say that the outer orifice, the hole here, is called the vulva. And it is covered by some skin-like parts which are called labia minora and labia majora, which look like huge lips. And if you go deeper inside, you will see that there are two holes here, two openings. One is of the vagina and the other is of urethra. So in females, the urethra does not participate in reproduction at all. It's simply for urination. So it's totally different hole. And this vagina is where the penis is inserted during sexual intercourse. The rectum, of course, is altogether a totally different hole, and that is related to egestion and digestion. Now note that here, just outside the vagina, there is something called the clitoris, which is, you can see, a micro penis. It's just an erectile tissue which helps to stimulate the female during sexual intercourse. Now this, of course, is the vagina, the cervix, the womb, the fallopian tube, and the ovary. This is a side view. So what happens is the penis is inserted inside and rubbed against the vagina, in and out, in and out, in and out, till the time the penis is excited enough to ejaculate the semen inside the vagina. And as you know, the semen has millions of sperms, microscopic, which will swim in, and it's a very life-threatening journey. It's not so easy. And if some of them can perhaps reach the fallopian tube, then the first sperm which fertilizes the egg cell will be the father's sperm creating the baby. The rest of the sperms will just wither away. And by the way, fertilization will happen only if ovulation has taken place. That is, the egg cell has already been released by the ovary, which happens on a particular day of the month. So on any other day, it could be a safe day. That means even though sexual intercourse takes place and sperms are released, since there is no egg cell, it's possible that no fertilization may take place and pregnancy won't happen. But these methods of calculating safe days are not 100% accurate. The best way to avoid pregnancy is abstinence, no sexual intercourse, or you can go for a surgery like a tubectomy or a vasectomy. That is explained in another chapter called population. Now, if you look at the ovary here, the ovary has many growing follicles, many of them, million. Every month, one of them starts maturing, and soon an egg cell is released into the fallopian tube, and that day falls around the 14th day, 13th to 14th day of the menstrual cycle. This is called ovulation, and now this egg is available for around 24 hours to be fertilized by the sperm. And the remaining graphene follicle is still useful. It's called the corpus luteum. It's a yellow colored mass of cell, but it will wither away after a few days if no fertilization takes place. Its function is to produce progesterone. Now, it is this hormone progesterone which helps in the thickening of the uterus walls. This is just a graph to show that how the uterus wall is getting thickened with each passing day. It is being thickened with nutritive tissue and blood vessels in preparation for implantation of the embryo which is going to stick soon, hopefully. But if no fertilization happens, or if no implantation happens, no pregnancy has started, then all the preparations go to waste. The tissues are just thrown out of the body through the vagina, and that is called the menstrual flow or periods, which may last for around 3 to 5 days. But no worries, at the start of the next cycle, again, a new egg cell will start developing and the wall of the uterus will start thickening once again, hoping that at least this month the sperm will come and fertilize the egg. So every alternate month, an egg cell is released by one of these. So if this month this ovary has released an egg cell, and if it's not fertilized, then the next month the other ovary will release an egg cell. So it's alternate. And this will go on till the age of around 55, 60, and that's when menopause will occur, and the woman will no longer be able to reproduce because she has stopped producing egg cells, which is wise because the egg cells would also be 55 to 60 years old, you see, and that may have some DNA damage, so the child won't be healthy at such an old age. Now, accidentally, if the two ovaries release egg cells at the same time, and if both of them get fertilized, then that may result in twins, but they won't be identical twins because there are two different egg cells fertilized by two different sperms, so you would have non-identical twins. But what if the single zygote itself accidentally splits into two zygotes? Then you will have identical twins, and they would in fact even have the same gender compulsorily. So the women become sexually active when they hit puberty at around 10 years of age, but it's not fixed. And they start developing secondary sexual characteristics as well. They are able to reproduce. And this start of the reproduction function in the body is called menarche in women. Also, if you see closely, this fallopian tube near the ovary has some hair-like structures called cilia or fimbriae, which pick up the egg cell and push it forward. Of course, it won't come all the way here. The sperm will have to come and fertilize it. Another hormone very important in the female reproductive system is estrogen. Now, estrogen is secreted before ovulation, just before ovulation, and progesterone is important for thickening of these uterine walls. But during menstruation, it becomes thin once again because all of this is thrown out through the vagina. The estrogen hormone is very important for the development of the sexual characteristics in women. Now let's study the menstrual cycle, about which I've already talked a lot. Also note that menopause can start at any time after the age of 45. So it's not a fixed age. It may go on till 55 as well. Depends from person to person. Now the menstrual phase, as I said, the periods last for around 3 to 5 days. That's the menstrual phase. And then starts the follicular phase, which is from the 5th day to the 12th day. Then we have the ovulatory phase, which lasts for around 24 hours. It could be the 13th or the 14th day. That is the best time for sexual intercourse if there's an intention to have a baby. And then we have the luteal phase from the 15th day till the 28th day, because the corpus luteum is active. If the egg cell is fertilized, then the corpus luteum will remain active to keep the uterus in a stable condition suitable for implantation, because if implantation doesn't happen, then the embryo will just fall out of the vagina, and that is called miscarriage or a natural abortion. Now this is how a sperm looks. It has a head, a middle piece with the mitochondria for the energy to swim with the help of the tail. You can see that sperms are swimming, and only the head will enter the egg cell, and the first sperm which enters seals the lock, so no other sperm can now enter. All other sperms will now just wither away. It's totally a matter of chance. It's not necessary that every sexual intercourse will result in pregnancy. And by the way, when somebody gets pregnant, then she may miss her periods because now the ovulation will stop for many months. Now this tail, of course, remains behind, and these 23 chromosomes plus 23 chromosomes of the egg cells mixed together give you a zygote with 46 chromosomes. Now understand that the 23rd pair of chromosome may either be XX or XY, which decides the gender of this baby. If it is XX, then it will be a female, and if it's XY, it will be male. So once again, the entire process step by step has been explained here till implantation. And once it's stuck here, then a tissue is created, which is a placenta. And look how the blood vessels develop as a link between the fetus and the mother's womb. The baby is actually surrounded by amniotic fluid. It can't breathe, but yet it will take oxygen from the mother's blood for its respiration. It will also take glucose and other antibodies and nutrients from the mother's blood, and it will give out its waste, its nitrogenous wastes, etc., which will be excreted by the mother. It's interesting to note that in a fetus, the vein carries oxygenated blood to the fetus, and the artery carries deoxygenated blood away from the fetus. Now let's understand the parts of the diagram here. So as you can see, the embryo is first of all surrounded by the amniotic fluid. That is why babies, as soon as they are born, they are very good swimmers, because they've been swimming for what, 8 to 9 months now. And this amniotic fluid is covered in a layer of amnion. The amnion is then surrounded by another layer called the chorion. These are all protective layers. They help protect the baby from mechanical shocks and prevent the baby from sticking to any of these layers. There is one more part called the yolk sac, which is quite tiny in case of human beings. And the fourth part is the allantois, which is this part. It becomes a part of the umbilical cord, which is the connection between the baby and the mother's womb. And here we have the placenta, the nutritive part. The placenta have many villi, which increases surface area for exchange of gases and other stuff. The mother's blood doesn't come in direct contact with the baby's blood, so even if their blood groups are different, chances of any problem is quite low. However, viruses may still be able to pass from mother to child. So HIV may be transmitted from an infected mother to the child. Now this is a journey, the growth graph here. A zygote becomes a morula, and after 7 days it's called a blastocyst, which implants onto the uterine wall. The embryo is 3 weeks old and hardly resembles a human being, but at 5 weeks it may start looking like a human because it has the heart and blood vessels now of its own. Then at 8 weeks, finally we call it a fetus. It has limbs, and now it's clearly a human being, and it respires but doesn't breathe, which I just explained. And now till 8 or 9 months it will stay in, and then it's called an infant. And once the baby is born, for the first time he will start breathing, so the respiratory passage needs to be cleared. He needs to remove all the amniotic fluid from his respiratory passages. So it's very important to make sure that the baby cries as soon as he or she comes out of the womb. If he doesn't, then just slap his bum and make him cry. Rather leave it to the doctor. Now the umbilical cord is of course cut, which will wither away because he no longer needs connection with the womb. He will drink the breast milk and get all its nutrients, and he will ingest and urinate on his own now. Now understand a few terms. Fraternal twins or non-identical twins can be diovular, meaning there were 2 ova produced, or dizygotic, meaning produced from 2 zygotes, that is 2 fertilized eggs. And identical twins, as I said, have a single zygote which accidentally split into 2. We can have triplets and quadruplets, etc. also, but I strongly suggest that you avoid having them. Placenta is very important because it acts not only as a means of giving nutrition to the fetus, but it also acts like an endocrine gland. It produces hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which are very important for the development of the baby. By the way, it's the progesterone which is given out through the urine that gives us a test of pregnancy in the urine test. Earlier, if you notice, the progesterone was being produced by corpus luteum, but that cannot happen for a very long time. So soon the placenta develops and it starts developing the progesterone. Otherwise, the baby will just have the mother will just have a miscarriage. Now, the reason why millions of sperms are released in a single ejaculation during sexual intercourse is that it's totally a matter of chance that fertilization will happen. So to increase the chance, this is done because it's not an easy process. You see, the female vagina is acidic. It has an acidic environment to keep it germ-free, which can kill the sperms as well. That is why the prostate gland produced an alkaline secretion to make the semen alkaline. So now you know why the semen is alkaline, to neutralize the acid out here so that the sperms can survive, or at least hope to survive, and try to reach the egg cell. Half of them go in the wrong direction because they can't sense where it is, and the remaining half go in the right direction. And I'm saying right direction assuming there is an egg cell release, there is an ovulation. Otherwise, it's just all the efforts go to waste, nothing happens. Also, the penis entering in and out into the vagina, there may be some friction. So to avoid this friction, the lubricant was released by the corpus glands. So now you know why the corpus glands secretion is important part of the semen. Now, it's not shown in this diagram, but the vagina has some tissue like a seal covering it, which is called the hymen. When the hymen breaks, a little bit of bleeding may happen, and usually it was believed that during the first sexual intercourse, some bleeding may happen, which was considered as a proof that the female is a virgin, which is quite a laughable aspect because hymen can break at any age, at a very young age, also due to sports activities like swimming, cycling, or any physical exercise. So a broken hymen doesn't necessarily mean that she's already had sexual intercourse. And by the way, why does it even matter? These things should not matter at all. And nowadays we have hymenoplasty, that is, they can restitch the hymen, so giving a false impression that the seal is not broken. This is quite ridiculous. Now remember that the vulva of the female is the outermost part here, which has labia minora and labia majora skin folds. They correspond to the scrotum of the male, and the clitoris corresponds to the penis of the male, and the ovary corresponds to the testis of the males. In fact, all males are actually females before they develop in the womb. In the initial stages, every baby is a female, but slowly they turn into a male because of the XY chromosome. Now, note that in females, puberty may start at 10, but in males, the puberty starts a little late, say around the age of 11. That's when their voice starts changing. They have pubic hair on their armpits, chest, on their chin, upper lip, etc. So their height starts growing later. And they may be a little confused lot, these boys, at a young age, so just forgive them for their weird behavior at this age.
Hi students, this is AJ sir. If you like this video, press the like button. If you would like to enroll for my online test series or online lectures, email me or message me on Instagram. Check the description for more information.